Hobby Warriors. Welcome to a new JTS reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're one of my subscribers, welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at something that I've thought was really cool. It's an indie war game that kind of scratches that narrative itch that sometimes players may have if they have a background in role-playing games, or if you're someone who just likes a narrative campaign-based game, or if you're someone who just really likes a cooperative experience. It's a miniatures agnostic game, so you can use whatever miniatures and terrain that you like. And it's called 5 Parsecs from Home, published by Modifiers. It's in its 3rd edition, and they recently had a new rulebook for 3rd edition that was published. So we're going to go ahead and go through the rulebook, kind of get you guys familiarized with what the game is. It's got a little bit of a cult following, but it's definitely not in the mainstream eye. But given the fact that, you know, the pandemic is still ongoing, and in different areas in the world, getting out to your gaming store, your gaming club, isn't quite as easy as it used to be. This might be something that you can play at home with close friends and family that might scratch that itch for you. So let's go ahead and get to it. So again, it's published by Modifiers. And here we've got the table of contents, so a little bit of background about the universe in the game, your character and crew creation, the main rules of the game, how the campaign works, how you fight your battle rounds, post-battle activities, a little bit more information, some fluff, if you will, about the setting, and then various appendices at the back to help you play through the game. I've already looked through the book before recording this, and there are tons of charts. So one key thing about this game is that everything is procedurally generated, so there's almost a chart for everything. So it's really good that they have these appendices in the back of the book for easy reference. So I'm not going to read through the fluffy intro text. We're going to kind of speed through that so that we can see the meat of the game. But the universe that they present is very much in the vein of shows like Firefly or Dark Matter, if anyone's familiar with that show, where there's this galactic superpower who, if you abide by all of their rules, you can lead a fairly decent life. But if you're out on the fringes of space in the frontier worlds, it's a little bit of the Wild West on a galactic scale. And your crew that you're building to play this game are people who, for various reasons that you will generate, you're on the fringes of society, and you kind of have to do the dirty jobs in order to get by. And I do actually want to mention the author of the game. Even though it's published by Modifius, it was actually written by Ivan Sorensen. So shout out to him. He's done a lot of work on this system over the years. And right now this is the culmination of his work. The next section of the game just kind of goes over some basic conventions that, if you're used to wargaming, won't be anything that you haven't seen before. If you're not used to wargaming, pretty much the system runs on D6s, so 6-sided dice, as well as 10-sided dice. if you're looking to play this game, you're definitely going to want to read through that section if you're not really familiar with wargames. Like if you're coming from an RPG background, there's a lot of information in just that page and a half that will clear up a lot of confusion for you. So again, norms of the game, what counts as an enemy. They kind of talk about their currency system, which is actually abstracted. So there's just this credit unit that you will use to buy everything, regardless to what part of the universe you may be in. Everything is just abstracted out to credits. And then this common sense section is kind of important to point out because this game is written as a solo narrative campaign-based war game. So you're not playing against an opponent, you're playing against the game's AI, and there's no one to police you. You're in charge of your own experience. So they kind of explain the spirit behind the rules, and also, kind of give you the freedom to, if something doesn't make sense, or if you feel like you'll have a better experience doing something one way instead of the way it was written in the book, then, they give you that carte blanche to go ahead and do that. So they kind of also go over the fact that it's miniatures agnostic. So when I go ahead and start my own campaign, I'm definitely going to do some campaign games of this on the channel. Personally, I'm probably going to use Infinity miniatures from Corvus Belli. One, I have a ton of them already painted, so I don't have to paint anything new. But then two, Infinity Terrain, which I also have a decent amount of. It's already pre-painted, or pre-colored, I should say. It's thick cardstock, and I have tons of it, so I can really just grab stuff that I already own and get straight to playing. But that's just my personal choice. You may like Starfighter miniatures, or some miniatures from Reaper. Maybe you want to use Games Workshop miniatures. The system really is wide open and lets you use whatever miniatures you want. And it even goes as far as, even though the rules were written with 28mm miniatures in mind, there's nothing stopping you from dropping that down to 15mm, or even like 10mm, possibly even all the way down to 6mm. The only thing to kind of keep in mind is that the system was written for individual miniatures on a single base. So when you go all the way down to like 6mm, you can single base a 6mm character, but it's going to be really, really tiny. So you probably don't want to go down that far. But 15mm, 10mm could totally work. And whenever you drop down to 15mm, I believe, you measure in centimeters. Anything above 15mm, you measure in inches. So on to character creation. So over here on the right, you've really only got 5 stats. So it's a very simple system as far as your character's base stats and what they're able to do. So you have this reactions, which people familiar with wargames, you can kind of think of this as your initiative value. I'm sorry, people familiar with RPGs, rather, can think of this as your initiative value. So whenever you're in the middle of combat, that stat is what affects your activation order. Your speed is pretty straightforward. It's how far you can move in inches. Combat skill is used to modify all of your combat rolls. Toughness is used for your when you're taking damage. And then savvy is sort of your catch-all for like luck, technical aptitude, your interpersonal skills, and so forth. And then there's this sort of hidden stat that they have called luck points, which aren't individual to a character. Your crew has a combined pool of luck points, and that's almost sort of like your get out of jail free card. So you can expend a luck point to re-roll something. You can spend a luck point to stop yourself from dying. But it is a finite resource that regenerates very slowly. So part of the game is actually managing your luck points so that you can use them when you need them to kind of help save the campaign, because this is procedurally generated. So you may fight a mission that is like overwhelmingly tough for you, and the proper thing to do is run away. And sometimes people may not survive that attempt to run away. Your luck points can save your crew when you're in a pinch. So the basic crew composition, the game system expects that a crew is 6 miniatures. Now, this was written as a solo game, but one of the ways that you can make this co-op is that each person in your gaming group can control one of the members of the crew. Another way where you can kind of add a competitive edge, and they talk about it in the end of the book and in the expansion, which we'll cover in another video, you can actually have people control their own crews, and then play the game that way as well. But you've always got 6 figures in a crew. 3 of them are forced to be human. And again, this rulebook is basically a giant suggestion. There's no reason why you couldn't change this if you wanted. But they expect 3 crew members to be human. Then 2 of them can either be human, a primary alien, or a primary alien, rather. And then your last crew member can be a human or a bot. Then, so there's the random generation. So you roll a D100, which is just rolling a 10-sided die twice. And the first time you roll it, it's the 10's position, and then the second time you roll it, it's the 1's position. So for each character, you go through and you roll whether or not you get a human, an alien, or a bot. Whenever you end up getting a strange character, this is kind of cool. So there's all of these different things that could be wrong or right with that character. Anything from they can be an undercover agent of the galactic superpower, to they could be genetically modified. They could be a hulked up drug user. They could be enhanced sort of like post-human. They can kind of be a empath. Like, there's all of these cool plot hooks that kind of make somebody in your crew special, if you will. So you go ahead, you figure out what the character is, and then on the next couple of pages, you see the modifiers for the different races to your base speed, or I'm sorry, to your base stats rather. So humans, only move 4 inches. They don't get any, additional modifiers. They're kind of considered average in the universe. Whereas a bot gets +1 combat skill, an extra pip of toughness, a little bit of extra savvy because they would have been programmed with a lot more knowledge and so forth. And then some of the different aliens, so like you've got engineers who are more savvy than humans, but they're not as tough. or you've got the Berserker kind of Karen, which if I had to liken these guys to anybody, it would be the Klingons from Star Trek. Really big on fighting you one-on-one in melee combat. There's actually rules for that as well. So they've got an extra pip of toughness. The Soulless, which are kind of like your heavily cybernetic enhanced post-humans, which are kind of cool. Precursors, which are just sort of like... oh, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. Precursors are alien humanoids that have like been around forever and are like super awesome. The Soulless are just like Terminator robots. You know, they're programmed to kill, and that's all they do. So we've also got like ferals, which are sort of like anthropomorphic humanoid animal hybrids. We've got the Swift, which are kind of like Dragonborn, but the way they write them in the little bits of fluff that are in the book, it's actually really cool. So they're like super skittish, and it's almost like they have ADHD and they can't sit still, which can make for some really funny comic relief plot hooks. Then they go into all the strange characters. So here we've got Deconverted. We've got the Unity Agent. So I'm not going to go through all of these. As you can see, each one has pluses and minuses. They've also got some special rules and advantages. Alright, so next you get to generate your background, your motivation, and then your class. Which all of this, again, is by charts. So you roll on the background table, and it tells you, sort of the archetype that your character's background was. And then some of these backgrounds will have effects, either on your starting resources or on your character stats. So, for instance, someone who's from a frontier gang is going to get +1 combat skill because they, grew up on the streets in a pretty harsh environment and had to learn how to defend themselves from a young age. Someone from a military outpost gets +1 reaction, so they activate quicker because their military training has kind of been drilled into them. So this is a really neat way to not only give you a jumping off point to kind of come up with a character's backstory, but it also affects the game as well to kind of help make your characters feel like what they are. So now the motivation table, very similarly, everybody gets a motivation, and depending on what you roll up, not only do you get your plot hook, but there's also an in-game effect. So someone who's motivated for glory gets +1 combat skill. So that's pretty cool. And then same thing for your class. So, if you roll up a hacker, you get +1 savvy, but you also gain a rival, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit when we get to that section. If you're an enforcer, on the other hand, you get that +1 combat skill, but you also gain a patron, which is kind of cool. So after you've given everybody their motivation, their class, and their background, you get to generate your starting gear for the crew. And this is actually done at the crew level, not at the individual mini level. So you generate all your gear, and then you divvy it out how you see fit. So you get 3 rolls on the military weapon table. You get 3 rolls on the low-tech weapon table. And then if you've got crew members who got a savvy increase when you were generating their motivations and their class and so forth, you can take one of your high-tech rolls, one of your military rolls, and roll on the high-tech table, which will get you some weapons with a little bit of extra oomph. So you generate everything. Oh, I'm sorry. You get one roll on the gear table, and then one on the gadget table as well. And then they also tell you how to generate your starting credits. All of these pieces of gear and gadgets all have in-game effects that are detailed later. But for right now, just know that you generate for your whole crew, and then you could divvy it up as you see fit. So moving on, every crew needs to be able to get around the galaxy, so you do start the game with a ship of your own. However, a really cool, kind of forced plot hook is that you start the game in debt because of how expensive starships are in this universe. So when you go through, you roll up what kind of ship you're going to get. So you can get anything from a worn-out freighter to a retired military patrol ship, battered mining ship, and some types of ships have different traits that'll have different effects on the game, different hull points for how much damage it can sustain. And I just want to point out, so there's not like straight up starship warfare in the game. In between battles in the course of a campaign turn, if you're traveling from one planet to another, sometimes you might encounter pirates, and then that will affect your hull points, but you're not actually like fighting a starship battle. That could potentially be an expansion in the future, but in the base game, you're not breaking out starships and having a starship dogfight. That's sort of all part of the narrative part of the game. But then each ship will also put you in debt for a pretty hefty sum of credits. So you roll what you roll and you get what you get. Then once you've got your ship all figured out, you can roll some flavor details. Now, these don't affect the game. It's really just to kind of give you a plot hook for why your crew is starting a campaign. So you could have been hired by a random member of the group. You could all have a common cause or belief. Maybe you're all like rebelling against the galactic superpower. Maybe you knew each other from a previous job, or you're living the dream, and you're all just space hippies who came together. And then after that, they kind of go through a character creation example where they go start to finish and explain, hey, we rolled this. So here's a little blurb about how, this person's role in the crew. And then they go ahead and fill out an example crew sheet, which you do get blank copies of these in the back of the book. And then it's on to the main rules. So they kind of explain, that credits are just abstracted money. It doesn't matter where you are in the universe or what race you're trading with. Everybody takes credits. Your characters earn experience points in order to get better. And the rules will later on tell you how you earn those. Usually it's by fighting in battles. And then you can obtain quest rumors through various events. And depending on your role on this chart, as a plot hook, it tells you what type of rumor you got so that you can kind of create your own narrative. Terrain rules here, kind of standard flair for a miniatures wargame. So they kind of give everything a label. So linear terrain would be like a wall or a gate. Miniatures can't be placed on top, but they can move over. An individual piece of terrain would be something like um, a tree or a signpost. Area terrain, which is actually common for things like forest, where there will be an outer perimeter, and then if you're inside that perimeter, you're inside the terrain feature. It could be like rubble, it could be blast craters. Like I said, forests are kind of common. So you can have a field feature. The difference between a field and an area here is that field does not block line of sight. So similar to most war games, use true line of sight for this game. And then block terrain would be something like a building that doesn't have any entrance points. And then you have interior, which would be if you had a building where somebody could go inside and like you can remove the top and play inside of a building. That would be interior terrain. So with difficult and impassable terrain, it uses up extra movement to get through it. So for every 2 inches that you move through difficult terrain, it uses an extra inch of your movement. And then obviously impassable terrain you can't move through because it's impassable. We already said line of sight is true line of sight. So if my character can see another character, I have line of sight. And that's considered mutual. So if I can see you, you can see me. There are some cover rules for if you're shooting across a linear obstacle. So if the shooter is not within an inch and your line of sight crosses a linear obstacle, your target's going to receive a cover bonus. And pretty much the same thing if you're shooting through people. And then they do have this little blurb. So, I mean, miniatures, the best of them are always super dynamic. And they're just letting you know that when they say true line of sight, it's to the miniature's torso. So, if they're waving their sword above their head, or, they've got guns akimbo out to the sides, true line of sight is from torso to torso. And then we go over cover. We've got a chart here with some different terrain types. So here, figure B is 10 inches away from the wall. Figure A is within an inch. So if B shoots at A is going to receive cover because B's more than an inch away from this wall. And then in this example, figure B is at the edge of a forest and he's inside of it. So B is going to receive cover. So now, moving on to actions. So whenever somebody's activated, you essentially get 3 actions. The way they divvy them up, you get a movement action, you get a combat action, and you get a free action. And you take them in that order. So you can't like fight and then move. You have to decide, hey, I'm going to move, and then I'm going to take my combat action. Now your free action can either be utilizing an item that you have on your person in your inventory, or you can sacrifice your combat action and take another free action. So if you didn't want to fight and maybe you had a med kit or something like that you wanted to use, and maybe you had some other device, you can forego attacking and get 2 free actions for that turn. So stunned, they have various negative status effects. You can become stunned, which you're still able to act. It just impairs you. But if you collect 3 or more stun markers, then you're removed from play. And they kind of have this blurb here where, you can use whatever you want to use for markers, as long as you can differentiate between what's what. So here they've got some movement actions that you can take. So you can dash, which is trading in your combat action to move an additional 2 inches. They also have, as they're going through here, sometimes enemy AI characters will have limitations on what they can do with certain actions, or maybe they're not able to take certain actions, so that'll be detailed here. So for instance, an enemy with a ranged weapon cannot dash. So proximity matters, like most war games. If you get too close, now you're in close combat. So if you move into base contact with an opponent, you're in close combat, which in the game they call it a brawl, which you resolve immediately. And you cannot oh yeah, so the Ka'aren, the sort of Klingons of this universe, they're forced to try to move into base contact with an enemy character to start a brawl. So even if they have a gun, they're going to, it's almost like an impetuous order from Infinity, if you're familiar with that. You're going to run and kind of like ignore cover at, an enemy trying to get into base contact. And if you can't get there, you'll shoot them. But if you can get there, you have to charge in and fight them hand to hand, which is kind of flavorful and kind of funny. There is a verticality to the movement system here. So you can climb up and down things utilizing your movement. And then there's also jumping, not just jumping up and down on a vertical plane, but also leaping horizontally. So there's rules for like how far of a gap you can clear. They do have fall damage in this game. If you try to jump down more than 3 inches, you suffer a hit. So depending on armor values and stuff, you may not actually take any damage, but they do have that in the system. And now sometimes you might be forced to move randomly. And whenever that happens, you need some sort of a way to randomize your direction. So one easy way, if you've never played like old Games Workshop games and have like an old scatter die, which is just a die that has a bunch of arrows on the facing, you can use a D10, and when you roll it, there's going to be a point of the die that's going to point off in a direction. And I think they have a picture of it here somewhere, or it might have been earlier in the book. But anyway, just trust me, if you roll a D10, like the die comes to an arrowhead. So you roll it, that determines your direction, and then you move your movement in that random direction. Oh, did I miss something? Oh, enemy movement. So different enemies will have different AI types, and they kind of sneak it in here in the movement section. So you've got cautious enemies, you've got aggressive enemies, tactical enemies, rampaging, defensive, beasts, and guardians. All of these will move in different ways, and they outline, what that AI system is going to make them do. So for combat, it's fairly simple. So to hit somebody, assuming they're in line of sight, you roll a d6, you add your combat skill, and then you've got a target number. So if your opponent is within 6 inches and they're in the open, you're shooting for a 3+. If they're within your weapon range and in the open, or within 6 inches but in cover, you're shooting for a 5+. And if they're within your weapon range and in cover, you're shooting for a 6+. So now, with your average combat skill, I believe was around a 3 before your modifiers and so forth, things can get pretty deadly pretty quick. So somebody who's really, really close to you, you're guaranteed to hit them with most characters. But somebody who, is a little bit further away and in cover, there's a good chance that you might miss. So now, also, they do have this thing where if you try to take a shot where your line of sight crosses another character, there's a chance that you will decide to not take the shot. So you roll a d6, and you have to get a 5+. So you have a 33% chance of being able to take the shot anyway. But if you fail that roll, the character just decides, hey, I don't want to risk hitting my friend. So you end up wasting your combat action. And now, close combat works a little bit different. So each character rolls a d6 and then adds their combat skill. Cairn, the Klingons, they get to roll twice and use the better roll. If you're carrying a melee weapon, you get +2. If you've got a pistol, you get +1. The lower total suffers a hit. On a draw, both characters take a hit. So resolving hits comes next. We'll get to that in a second. If you eliminate your opponent, you get to move 2 inches in any direction. So if you're familiar with Warhammer 40k, you get a consolidation move. And anyone who gets hit in close combat but survives, you actually get pushed back an inch. So whenever combat is resolved, you're never going to end combat being in base contact with that model that you were fighting. So now if you're fighting a stunned opponent, or if someone's fighting you and you're stunned, the non-stunned person gets a +1 bonus per stun marker. However, the stun marker gets removed. So them clocking you kind of brings you back to your senses. And then if you're in a fight with multiple opponents, you resolve normally, and you select one of the people you're engaged with to fight for their group, but they get a +1 bonus. Now, say you're engaged with 2 people, you win the first fight, so knock that guy out. You're still engaged with the other person, and now you have to immediately brawl them again. So if you got a super, beefed out melee character, you might be able to run in and clear out groups. However, I think for most characters, that's probably a dangerous prospect. So as far as resolving hits, So you roll a d6 and you add the damage of the attack, and if that result exceeds your toughness stat, or they roll a natural 6, the character becomes a casualty, just straight up just gets removed from play. So the game is kind of deadly. A roll that's left in the toughness will push the target an inch away. So as you hit... Sorry, I just punched the microphone. So that's you getting hit and the kinetic force kind of blowing you back. And then you get stunned. You get a stun marker. So pretty much getting hit can be pretty deadly. However, there are saving throws. So if you've got a defensive screen of some sort or some form of armor, you'll go ahead and get a saving throw. So if you have a saving throw and you get hit, you roll a d6 when you would become a casualty. A roll equal to or above the saving throw number negates the hit. However, you still do get the stun marker. So bots, soulless, deconverted, assault bots, they actually have built-in armor plates. So they get a 6+ armor saving throw. Assault bots get a 5+. So armor, as you can see, is kind of weak. 6+ save is not something that you really want to count on, but it's better than nothing. And a weapon with piercing negates it entirely. However, if you get a saving throw from a screen, which you can kind of think of like a nano screen, if you're familiar with Infinity, that is not negated by piercing. If for some reason you have multiple saving throws, they don't outright stack, you can take the better one and then add 1 to the target number. So in the example, they have a bot who has that innate 6+ save. They have a screen that gives them a 5+. So the combination, they take their better save and they add 1, so their 5+ goes to a 4+. So I mean, that's kind of cool. Going from that 6 up, getting crappy armor, but now you're at a 50% chance to not die. That's pretty awesome. So here's where they go into, you can use that luck point we were talking about. So you can use a point of luck instead of dying, and you get moved 1d6 inches from where you are, which kind of represents you dodging out of the way, which is kind of cool. Little blurb, enemies will always try to shoot it, the easiest thing to hit. Aiming. So if you're not stunned and you don't move, you can aim, which you get to reroll 1s on your to hit dice, which is pretty cool. You got panic fire, so you can just blow all of your ammunition, which I'm not sure when you would ever do this, because in this game system, you blow all your ammunition, and you can't use that weapon for the rest of the match, for the rest of the battle. You don't get more ammunition until you go back to your ship. Which normally in the game, you're not like counting bullets, but this ability, you just waste all your ammo and the gun's gone. You can only fire at half range, but you get 2 additional shots when you resolve your attack, and you have to shoot the closest available target. So I mean, if you're in a pinch, maybe you just needed that little bit of extra damage to take somebody out, it might be worth a shot, but you definitely don't want to blow that early in a game. So here we've got some combat examples, some nice diagrams that kind of explain everything. We've got A little bit of artwork of some different sci-fi guns, which are very Infinity-like, which is one thing, like, going through this rulebook, I totally just had Infinity miniatures in mind for what I wanted to use for my crew. So here we go into all of the weapons and gear. As you can see, there are traits, which all of these will have different game effects. Most things appear to have one shot. There are some things that have two, just a handful that have three. Glare sword. I'm kind of curious what that is. Melee, elegant, piercing. I feel like that might be something handy to stick on your cairn. But yeah, so here we go through the traits. Oh, there you go. So when brawling, if you've got an elegant weapon, like that glare sword, you can reroll your attack die. So that is kind of awesome. But yeah, so again, getting weapons in the game is somewhat random. So what you start out with is definitely random. And then when you go to vendors in between missions, there's some randomness there as well. So you can't always cherry pick, what the best thing is. But most of these seem relatively helpful. Maybe not the clumsy thing, but if it's what you got, it's what you got. That's part of the fun of narrative gaming, is taking a negative and role playing it and turning it into something hilarious. So we've got gun mods. So if any Call of Duty fans, you can stick an assault blade on your gun. You can put on a bipod. Have some sort of shock attachment. All of that's cool. You can, upgrade your gun sights. Then you've got consumable items. So these are the things that you would use your free action on during a turn. So there's some kind of a drug called Rage Out, where you get +2 speed and +1 to brawling rolls. So that's... Oh, and if you're a cairn, you get those benefits for the rest of the battle. That's kind of awesome. You got stim packs, some kind of crystals that'll like blind your opponent, some more combat drugs. So that's all pretty cool. Here we've got some armor, so you can get standard battle dress. Oh, interesting. So not only does it give you a save, it also increases your reaction stat. Camo cloak, which doesn't give you a save, but it gives you better cover mods. You got combat armor, screen generators, flex armor. So lots of different options there. It looks like the best save that you're going to get on any kind of gear, though, is going to be that 5+. So you can get cybernetic implants. You've got utility devices that you can carry, and you're allowed 3 items from the list at any point in time. Hoverboard is kind of sick. I have no idea what miniature I'm going to use to represent me having a hoverboard, but I need to find something. Actually, so there's a Netflix series for League of Legends Arcane. They have these sort of kind of clockwork, maybe partially magic infused hoverboards in that series that are freaking awesome. And if somebody does 3D models of like those, I would totally kit bash something. So any 3D designers out there, get on that. More utility devices. Robo Rabbit's Foot. That's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. Gives you a little luck. Then we've got things that they're not carried by crew members. They're left on the ship. So you can get fake IDs, or a fixer, genetic reconfiguration kit. What? That's crazy. Okay. Loaded dice. You're out here cheating in your sabacc games in between missions. So lots of cool things here that have an effect in game, but also they're very narrative and fluffy. So here we go. Ship basics. Everything you need to know about owning a ship. So if you lose your ship, you can scrap it for not very much money. There's this emergency takeoff thing. So like when your ship gets damaged, you could choose to go to a new planet in between missions. And there may be reasons why you want to do that. But your ship is going to incur damage. And if you run out of hull points, your ship will be totaled. And then you're kind of stuck on whatever planet you're stuck on. Unless you buy passage on a cargo ship to a different planet. But there's limitations on your ability to earn money. Because part of owning a ship is like you can smuggle things and whatnot in between missions. So you kind of have to manage that. Now, if you want to get a new ship, this is the part of the rules that cracked me up the most. So ships aren't cheap in this game, and there's a table coming up where you'll see how expensive they are. But you can actually get a loan. You can finance up to 70 credits, and then you got to pay the bank back at the end of every campaign turn. And if you don't pay, they will come impound your ship, which is awesome. So you can also upgrade your ship with different components and so forth. So we've got medical bays, cargo holds, yada, yada, yada. Auto turrets, military nav system. So all of this stuff mostly affects, post-battle at the end of the campaign turn where, you're earning credits, for doing smuggling runs and stuff like that. Oh, sorry. There's also fuel costs. So every time you jump, you also have to spend money for fuel. And the more upgraded your ship is, the more fuel it uses. So that's fun. Alright, so going through a campaign. Now, we just went through all of the rules. So we're going to kind of speed through some of this. It really just tells you how the campaign works. So you pick your crew just like we went through. There are some optional rules and tweaks that you can do where you can have smaller crew sizes. So a 5 or a 4-man crew. However, that doesn't... there's really no reason to drop down to a 4-man crew. I would just play it with 6. So you can decide whether or not you're going to use the story track, which is in the appendices. We'll get to that later. And now here's the cool thing is, because it was written as a solo game, you get to decide when you win. Excuse me. Need a drink. Been talking for, 53 minutes. Alright, so you get to decide when you win. So you can play 20 campaign turns, all these different options. Kill, 25 unique individuals. You decide your victory conditions. And you can select a difficulty mode. So they have easy, and there's some rules, on how you modify things for an easy campaign. Normal is just rules as written. Then there's challenging, hardcore, and insanity, where you make things harder on yourself gradually. And then they have this elite rank system, which is sort of like a New Game Plus kind of thing. So you track this on your own, and as you gain elite ranks, you get extra bonuses. So, each rank will give you an extra story point. Um, you get, 2 XP per rank. For every 3 elite ranks, you can roll up an additional character and kind of choose, have more options for your starting crew. And there's even a blurb in here for, hey, make some house rules if you want. They do encourage you not to add house rules in the middle of a campaign. Do all of that up front. They kind of go over story points. So you can spend a story point to have something that failed succeed. You can spend it to roll twice and pick a result that you actually want. You can spend it for a reroll. And like most games, when you reroll something, you have to accept the result of the reroll. You can't reroll a reroll. And then you start your campaign with 1d6 plus 1 story points. And then they kind of just go into a blurb about how much randomization is kind of there. So you kind of get these, and this is completely optional, but you get these sort of free passes that you can give yourself, and you get 1 use of each type of free pass. So one of them is it's time to go, and you can use that free pass, and all of your crew just immediately runs away from the fight. Everyone gets away safe. Looked worse than it was. You get to ignore an injury. That character recovers immediately. Did you ever meet my mate? You just get a new character added to your team out of nowhere, which can help you out of a pinch. A lucky shot. If you just missed, make it a hit. And rainy day fun, you just get a little bit of extra credits. So again, these are all 1 use, and in order to earn more uses, you have to have gotten 5 elite ranks. So this is completely optional, but if you're brand new to Wargames, it's kind of nice that they have this sort of plot device built in to keep your campaign from ending prematurely. So the basis of a campaign turn. So 1 is travel. So there's steps for that. Then there's the world phase, where you've gotten to where you wanted to go, and now you're gonna do ship repairs, assign crew tasks, look at job offers, assign equipment, resolve any rumors, and then choose your battle. Step 3 is the tabletop battle. And then step 4 is the post-battle. So you look and see if you've got a rival, look and see if you've got a patron, get paid, decide if you want to invest in advanced training, buy stuff, and then you roll for a campaign event, roll for a character event, and check the progress of the Galactic War. So then you're going to go into detail for each of those steps. And all of this is really just kind of generating plot hooks. So we're not going to dive in too deeply. We're already at an hour. So I got distress calls, patrol ships, cosmic phenomena. So when you get to a new world, here's all the stuff that will happen. You kind of roll up which I guess we will point this out because it has an impact on fighting a battle. Um, it looks like, you could have a world with a hazy atmosphere where people can only see d6 plus 8 inches, which that'll make things kind of interesting. Yeah, so all of this is really just plot hooks, some of which do have effects on the game. Same thing here with the world steps, upkeep and ship repairs, paying for medical care, ship debt, rivals and patrons and how they affect you. So a patron looks like they'll hire you for jobs. Then when you're trading, so here's what I was talking about. You don't always get to have a lot of choice in what it is that you're going to buy. So if you go to trade and you get a trade result of a personal weapon, you just get to roll on the low-tech table. So there's no guarantee of what it is that you're going to get all the time. So you kind of get what you get. You got to make the best of it. So all these are just results for trading, exploration as well. Tons of results. Then you can find a job. Signing equipment, kind of self-explanatory. All the stuff that you got, you divvy it out to your crew. Then you get to choose your battle for your tabletop battle for that turn. So you can carry out an opportunity mission, which is always available. If you've tracked down a rival, you can attack them. If you have an active quest, you can continue it. And if you have a patron, you can do a job for your patron. Again, just ways to sort of push the narrative on your game and give you some plot hooks. And then they go through an example campaign turn there. And now getting ready for battle. So the meat of what we want to deal with. So here are all of the deployment conditions, which again, it's all randomized. So you're going to roll. If there's notable sites, you get random objectives, which all get detailed here. It looks like you've got eliminate, which is your kind of standard assassinate. Access, where you have to like hack something. Acquire, where you're trying to like grab an objective. Defend, where you're just trying to survive. And then deliver, where you're trying to take something somewhere. Let's see, fight off, which is another like kill everything. Move through, so you have to go from your board edge to your opponent's board edge. So lots of different mission objectives. There's still a whole nother page of mission objectives. Your enemies get tactics that they can use before the fight. You get the roll for that. Then you get to determine how your enemy is going to work. So the different AI types, all of that has to be determined. So here we go. So here are the different enemies that you can end up running into. And again, all of this is all procedurally generated. So anything from, child soldiers in a gang to, the Cairn outlaws to pirates, to mercs and enforcers, guild troops, feral mercenaries, assassins, rage lizard mercs. Yeah, so lots of different types of enemies in the bestiary for you to fight through. All of their stats are, right here in a very easy to read format. More enemies. Then enemy weapons. So if you have unique individuals in the enemy crew, so say for instance like you had a rival, you can generate what type of unique enemy they are and they get a bonus. So then you set up your battlefield, and so it looks like 2x2, a 2.5 by 2.5, or a 3x3 feet table. So max game size you're looking at here is a 3x3, which when you think your crew size is only 6 miniatures, that actually kind of makes sense. So you can actually play this on a relatively small table, which is great for being able to run this at home. They have some guidance for how much terrain you should have. So if you're going to play on a 3x3, you should have like 3 large pieces, 6 small pieces, and then 3 linears. Whereas like if you were going to play on a 2x2, you should have 2 large, 4 small, and then 2 linears. So not a ton of terrain, but enough to allow for some interesting gameplay. And then they go through the battle round. So there's the reactions roll, quick actions, enemy actions, slow actions, and then the end phase. You can seize the initiative. So if you, let's see here, roll 2d6, add the highest savvy score of any crew member, add +1 if you're outnumbered. There's some other modifiers. On a total of 10 plus, every character in your crew may either take a normal move or fire before the battle begins. Any shots taken only hit on a natural 6. So it's a chance to kind of get a 1-up on the enemy. So the reaction roll, you roll a d6, a number of d6 equal to the number of your characters. Assign each of the dice results to one of your characters, comparing it to their reaction score. So any character assigned a die result equal or below their reaction score will act in the quick actions phase. All enemies will act in the enemy action phase. And then characters that were assigned a die result higher than their reaction score will act in the slow action phase. So that's kind of interesting. So you could potentially, based on your rolls and your reaction stats, have some characters act before the enemies, and then some characters act after all of the enemies. And it's going to be random every turn. So that can be interesting and produce some varied gameplay and consequences and so forth, and some interesting choices is the phrase I'm looking for. So they go over actions again in the quick action phase. So Snapfire is kind of like an Overwatch mechanic. Then there's the end phase. Any end of round activities, checking if defeated enemies have forced withdrawal, or if something says it happens at the end of the round. Then at the end of the round, the enemy will test morale if anybody was lost. They go through how to go ahead and calculate that. Player forces do not test morale. Instead, you get to run away by going to a board edge. And then battle ends if you've achieved your objective. All the enemies have died. You've achieved the win condition. Then battle events. The end of round 2, roll once on this table and apply the result. Roll a second random event at the end of round 4. So random things can happen in the middle of the battle, which will definitely make things interesting. So the enemy reinforcements, change of plan, the AI type can change. So lots of cool stuff here. Oh, that table was even bigger than I thought. So tons of cool stuff that can randomly happen in the middle of your game. And then they go into your post-battle phase. I love this check for invasion, gathering the loot. Alright, so any character that was a casualty after the battle, they have to roll on the injury table. There's a different injury table for bots. Yeah, you can perma-die. That's a thing. You get crippling wounds. Serious minor injuries, knocked out. Love School of the Hard Knocks. Roll a 96 or 100, you just get 1 XP. It's kind of awesome. So you earn your experience. So if you became a casualty, you get +1 experience, because you know not to do that again. If you survived but you didn't win, you get 2. If you survived and won, you get 3. If you had First Blood, you get +1. If you killed a unique, you get another bonus 1. If the campaign's on easy mode, you get a freebie. And if you complete the final stage of quest, you get +1. So you can do ability increases. So if you have enough experience points, you can spend XP to upgrade a character and increase their scores. The listed cost will increase the score by 1. So for reaction, it costs 7 XP to increase your score by 1. And then this column shows you your cap. Then you can invest in some advanced training. So there's pilot training, mechanic, medical school, merchant school, security training, broker and bot technician. All of these have various effects on the game in various phases. Now these character events, I was curious what these were. So you roll on the character event table, which is where, here we go. Okay, so like you can sell off some cargo. The tax man is coming after you. Oh wow, so you can become depressed. You can make some friends. You can get a letter from home. So all these different plot hooks that, again, further push the narrative and give you some in-game effects. You might find some loot, which is all randomized. You might find some items, which again are all randomized. And then they give an example of the post-battle. So the setting, we won't go too deep in this. I'll kind of blitz through. So they talk about the Unity, which is the galactic superpower. how humans are treated out on the fringe of society, how the aliens are treated. And then we're into the appendices. So there's options for playing on a grid. So you can make scenarios more complex. Then they go into the story track. So this is to help you plan a story arc into your campaign. So you can use that to kind of help guide you in creating your narrative. They also give you some notes on if you wanted to play cooperatively. And then if you wanted to run this kind of like an RPG session, they also have some notes if you wanted to add in a game master to kind of control the enemies and control the larger story. So that's totally an option, and they give you some guidance for that here. Then there's a section for creating neutral characters. And then they kind of go into the inspirations. So Firefly, Trigun, interestingly enough, but it definitely fits. Star Wars, Soldier, Blade Runner, some video game influences, Mass Effect, obviously. And then, tabletop games, so old school Warhammer, Warzone, Laserburn. Then we've got some art inspiration and some crew logs and battle round reference, campaign turn reference, weapon reference, and that's the end of the book. So I know this was a long one. Hopefully you all enjoyed this review. Personally, I'm very excited. I haven't played the game yet, but once I get through Infinity Defiance, I'm definitely going to give this a shot. I may even kind of sprinkle it in, in between some Defiance missions, but we'll have to see. If you're interested in seeing some playthroughs of this or more content related to 5 Parsecs from home, let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, help me out with the algorithm, and I will catch you all in the next video. Keep slaying the Grey, Hobby Warriors.